approved for NSIA to put itself forward to host this illustrious gathering and agreed to grace this occasion. Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investments, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, whose leadership and commitment continue to shape our economic landscape. My dear brother, Obaid, our ASIF chairman, who continue to propel ASIF to unimaginable heights. Our dynamic NSIA board of directors, ably led by my boss, Dr. Olusegun Ogunsanya. Distinguished chief executives of African sovereign wealth funds, who continue to demonstrate that we are not merely fund managers, but nation builders, market makers, and indeed catalysts for trust. Our African Development Finance institutions, represented here today by Professor Benedict Orama, President Samaila Zubeiru, VP Solomon Quaynor, and MD Alan Ebobise, who continuously advocate for our place on the global stage through their sheer force of personality and pioneering investments. Professor Lumumba, our father, who was unanimously requested by the ASIF Council to be our first speaker today to inspire us all and remind us that Africa's destiny is in our hands. Mr. Liu, the President and Chief Executive Officer of CIC, for your consistent friendship and partnership. Our friends too numerous to mention, DG Ashish, British Robinson, VC Gumel, Mr. Richard Ekrish, distinguished heads of agencies, partners, captains of industries, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and a warm welcome to the 4th annual meeting of the Africa Sovereign Investors Forum. It is an honor and a privilege to stand before such a distinguished gathering of thought leaders, policymakers, investors, entrepreneurs, and development partners from across the continent and indeed the globe. The theme of this year's forum, leveraging African sovereign wealth funds to mobilize global capital for transformative development in Africa, could not be more timely. Over the course of this meeting, we shall be focusing on how, through effective domestic, continental, and global partnerships, African sovereign wealth funds can, on balance, achieve 3 things. The first is how we can offer the right balance between being risk takers, saddled with the responsibility of catalyzing economic impact on the one hand, and being conservative investors, managing wealth for our future generations on the other. Secondly, how we can collectively co-create a sustainable investment vehicle that can mobilize global capital at scale to channel towards propositions that offer as much emphasis on commercial returns as social returns. And thirdly, how we can position ourselves as the preferred financial and strategic partners of choice with the right blend of domestic influence and capital for global investors seeking market exposure in our respective sovereigns. We will do so through an excellent blend of keynotes, panel discussions, fireside chats, and in-depth knowledge sessions that touch upon areas such as sustainable infrastructure, wealth creation through agriculture, climate finance, AI, and the critical role that private capital, DFIs, and institutional investors working together can play in our collective development. We will also be signing a plethora of investment and strategic agreements that would give impetus to our collective will to drive transformation through investments and partnerships. It is rare that we have in one room the policymakers who shape our regulations, the capital providers who take calculated risks, the entrepreneurs who create groundbreaking projects, and the DFIs, the institutional investors, the credit enhancers who unlock financing. It is our hope that this forum serves as the catalyst to turn this perfect blend of expertise into actionable, transformative outcomes. As we engage in meaningful discussions, let us bear ASIF's rallying cry in mind, which is that the true value of our efforts lies not only in the capital we attract, but more importantly, in the lives that we impact and the opportunities we create for future generations. Welcome again to Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much, Mr. Aminu Umar Sadiq. Your distinguished self, this fourth ASIF forum, and of course, giving us a bit of the groundwork of what to expect. Can we please give him another round of applause? Like our immediate past speaker, our next speaker is also one overseeing his country's sovereign strategic investment fund, who is renowned as an expert in structuring public-private partnership and cross-border sovereign investment platforms across, that has earned him the rightful position as chairman of African Sovereign Investors Forum and also the International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Funds. He's of course also the chief executive officer of his country's sovereign strategic fund, ITMA Capital. Please welcome now for his opening address our chairman, Mr.
Your Excellency Kassim Shettima, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Chief Waki Adum and Dr. Jomoki Odolowe, Excellencies, Honorable guests, distinguished colleagues. It is my great privilege to welcome you all to the fourth annual meeting of the Africa Sovereign Investor Forum. Let me begin by extending my sincere gratitude to Mr. Aminu Umar Sadiq and to the entire team at the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority for graciously hosting us in the vibrant city of Abuja and making this important gathering a reality. Also, allow me to extend our sincere appreciation and gratitude on behalf of all the participants to the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Nigerian authorities for that unwavering support and warm hospitality in hosting this fourth annual meeting ASIF. I also wish to sincerely thank each of you for being here today around a common and urgent theme, mobilizing capital for transformative development in Africa. I am also pleased to see that the momentum is real and keeps growing. We are honored with the presence of our friends and long-term partners from the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. They've been with us during the launch and each edition since then. We trust and support are much appreciated. We also have the honor and the privilege to have with us a delegation from the China Investment Corporation, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of China. We look forward to showing you that Africa is open for businesses and that ASIF and its members are the right person to do so. Thank you. I obviously thank everybody, but I must say my gratitude to another long-term supporter of ASIF, the AFDB, and also Africa 50. It's good to see you again among us. Back to this year's edition, as it marks the third anniversary of ASIF. With each passing year, our forum maintains a unique momentum, relevance, and builds more attraction. This year, we are proud to welcome two new members, the Ghana Petroleum Fund and the Mutapa Investment Fund of Zimbabwe, bringing our total membership to 17 sovereign investors committed to our shared and ambitious vision. ASIF was born from a simple yet powerful belief that collective action will always outweigh isolated effort. In just 3 years, we have made significant strides, laying some institutional foundation of the forum, advancing peer dialogues, elevating our strategic visibility, and enhancing our global positioning. And today, we will be laying the first stones of a unique sovereign-led initiative to attract patient capital and contribute to closing the Africa's funding gap as promised 3 years ago. None of these milestones would have been achieved in isolation. They are the result of shared purpose, teamwork, and steadfast conviction. Africa's future must be steered by Africans united in action. This mantra echoes His Majesty King Mohammed VI's message at the 2022 inaugural ceremony of ASIF, when he said, "It is a high time for Africa to assert itself, take its destiny into its own hands, and hold its rightful place on the global stage." Among the many imperatives before us, regional integration stands out. This is one of the many imperatives that come with the realities of our continent. It is not a choice, but a necessity to gain the scale required to attract long-term capital and catalyze development. Take, for instance, the Atlantic front, this immense maritime corridor, 22 coastal states to Europe and to the Americas, with energy, infrastructure, fiber optic, backbones, modernized ports, green shipping lines. The Atlantic African space can evolve into a strategic economic highway carrying energy, data, goods, and ideas in every direction, unlocking the full potential of the continent and its people. The benefit of this transformation will be felt from Tangier to Cape Town and across the rest of the continent. And I cannot stand before you here in Abuja as a Moroccan and not mention one of the most strategic projects of our continent that embodies the ambition vividly, the Africa-Atlantic gas pipeline, also known as the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline. Stretching over 6,000 kilometers along the Atlantic coast and onshore and spanning 15 countries, this project will transport Nigerian gas to Morocco and Sahel countries and ultimately to Europe, but it does far more than that. It unlocks downstream industries, lowers energy costs, and lays the groundwork for future socio and economic development. This is just one example. By investing jointly in logistical, digital, and social infrastructure, we can shorten supply chains, deepen intra-African trade, build a strong, healthy, and resilient continent, and reduce our collective exposure to global uncertainty. ASIF's ambition is a true testament that by joining forces around strategic initiative, we can turn any complex aspiration into bankable reality, sending a clear message that Africa can integrate, industrialize, and decarbonize. Yet the scale of the challenge remains immense. Africa's infrastructure alone are estimated to 113 to 117 billion annually, while current financing mobilizing remains around 18 billion, leaving a shortfall of almost 100 billion each year. Bridging this gap, or even a portion of it, would unlock productivity, generate value chain in agribusiness, pharmaceutical, and digital services, and accelerate our path toward inclusive prosperity. This is precisely why we will promote and foster transformative investment as well as create decent jobs today while preventing our resources for future generation. And this is perfectly aligned with the vision we agreed on in 2022, Rise Africa for Resilient, Inclusive, Sustainable, Empowered Africa. Our unity these past 3 years and this gathering today sends a clear message. Africa's sovereign capital is not only ready to fund its future, it is ready to shape it for the benefit of current and future generations. My friends, the stakes are generational. Let us therefore move forward to transforming vision into execution, promise into prosperity, and capital into opportunity for every African. Together, we have unlimited potential to reshape the Africa investment landscape, make it more productive and more impactful. By doing so, we lay the foundation for a more stable and just tomorrow, and ensure that future generations inherit a continent that reflects our shared value and aspiration. Let us reflect on that in the coming days. Thank you for your unwavering dedication and engagement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Obeid Amran, for your welcome address, which captured the essence of why we are all gathered here. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on very quickly to the very first presentation today. But before I bring up our first presenter, I'd like to appeal to all of our speakers to please adhere to the allotted time. We have a monitor here that has a timer that will speak to how many minutes you have and will count you down. Thank you. Now we would have our first presentation centered around harnessing sovereign wealth for Africa's self-reliance, from resource dependency to industrial powerhouse. Now, who better to deliver this than a powerhouse himself? Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is therefore my honor to make welcome on stage one of Africa's most respected intellectuals, a renowned scholar, distinguished professor, eloquent orator, and a passionate advocate for African Renaissance and a transformational leader. Please make welcome with a resounding applause, Professor P.L.O. Lumumba. Thank
you. Much. Let me start by recognizing His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Shetima, the cabinet ministers here, and distinguished delegates here present. Let me say that I'm glad to be in this assembly. Let me also say that my disciplined thoughts have been reduced into a paper which will be distributed to you, so that my presentation will be anecdotal because I'm speaking to the converted. I'm speaking to people who know the significance of sovereign funds, but yet the people we are targeting are to be found in the villages and hamlets in the continent of Africa. And what we do here, what we say here, will only have meaning if they are cascaded to them and it improves the quality of their lives. In the year 2019, I was part of a delegation of 200 individuals, investors, who visited Ghana to remind the Ghanaians and to remind ourselves that the continent of Africa must lift herself by her bootstraps. On the 14th day of August, the year 2023, I was part of a delegation that visited the president of Malawi, President Chakwera. And we reminded the president, and he agreed, that whenever we in Africa talk about investors, we think of companies from Europe, America, and Asia with billions. We remember the president, and he agreed that even an African with $5,000 is an investor if he or she collaborates with fellow Africans. Not so long ago, on the 7th day of June to be exact, this year, I was in Harare, Zimbabwe, talking to 3,000 young men and women who have faith in the continent of Africa and who believe that those like assembled here are speaking for them. Today, we must remind ourselves that Africa continues below her weight. We must remind ourselves that Africa is still the target of groups, of individuals and corporations outside of her who may say that they love Africa, but they don't. That is how I understand Ha Jun Chang of South Korea when he writes his book, The Bad Samaritans. There is no shortage of bad Samaritans in the world. And it is our duty not to be nice. It is our duty to recognize them and to unmask them. I hope that during this assembly, you will not be too diplomatic with each other, that you will allow the truth to reign supreme. As I speak to you now, many of you will know that a lot has been written about the continent of Africa. We know that our gold is mined in Ghana, it is mined in Mali, it is mined in Nigeria, but it is traded in London and other European capitals. Yesterday, as I was traveling to Abuja, I sat next to a gentleman who is present in this assembly from Botswana. And I, during the conversation, told him that I'm now told that you, Botswana, do cut your own diamond. And he told me that what is now happening is that the price of diamond has gone down. And I told him I know why. They are no longer happy that you are not cutting diamond in Antwerp. They are no longer happy that you can now do it for yourselves. And he told me, we in Botswana do now know that diamonds are not forever. And knowing so as we do, that is why we talk about corporate sovereign wealth. Because we know that we have an intergenerational duty to cater for generations yet to be born. That duty obligates us to think that our resources are not inexhaustible. So that when you are drilling oil in Angola, in Equatorial Guinea, in Nigeria, you must remember that all of you who are present in this assembly in the next 100 years, you will be upstairs. But there will be Nigeria to be served. What are you doing with the income that you are realizing now so that your children and children's children will have something to inherit? You know, when I look at Africa today, with 1.4 billion of us, we still have economies which are in diapers. We still gauge the mood of our economies through the moodies. We still wait for our budgets to be approved by the World Bank and the IMF. We still, when we want money, go to the Euro bond, not the Afro bond. No, we don't. When I fly any African airline, they tell me that I can buy the merchandise using hard currency. The naira is not hard, it is soft. The CD is not hard, it is soft. The shilling is not hard, it is soft. Even our sovereign funds, when I was looking this morning, is still denominated in the American dollar. I look forward to the day when we will speak differently. I look forward to the day when this continent will have liberated ourselves economically. We won the political battle, and it's even debatable that we did. We received the crown, but the crown jewels are elsewhere. So you ladies and gentlemen who are present here, ask yourself, those who are writing about Africa are still wondering when we will liberate the continent. When I read Zambia's Dambisa Moyo, she tells us that aid will never help us, giving meaning to the book, to the title of our book, Dead Aid. When I read Greg Mills, he poses the question, why is Africa poor? And what can we do about it? Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Vice President, God places you and others in positions of honor and trust. We ask you to ask yourself and those with whom you serve, how is it that you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered as men and women who had the opportunity to serve and did not serve well? I wish you well. Because if you lead us well, we will support you. We'll ensure that out of every 100 naira that you sell oil for, please keep 2 for future generations. Those of you who are from Zimbabwe, this is the time to ask, why is it that when you introduce a new currency, your economy de-dollarizes again? What are we not doing right? Why is it that when in Africa, when we appear or think that we have diagnosed the disease and we apply an antidote, new wounds appear? What are the fundamentals that we are not doing right? Why is it that the Emiratis, little Emirati, come to Africa and use their funds to finance our airports, to finance our ports? What are they doing right? Why is it that little South Korea, little as compared to the continent of Africa, tell us what to do? Why is it that Qatar tells us what to do? Why is it that Oman tells us what to do? Why is it that Bahrain tells us what to do? Why is it that little Norway with a population of 5 million has a sovereign fund of 1.7 million and big Nigeria does not have 4 billion? Why is it? Are we children of a lesser God? These are the things that we must ask ourselves today. It is not for want of intellect, no. The best schools on earth. It is not for want of resources. This is the most resource-rich continent on earth. The resources in the Democratic Republic of Congo are scandalous. But yet, ironically and diabolically, we are still poor. I'm preaching to the choir. You know what ought to be done. Our duty now is to energize our things and have time-bound approaches to what we do. Here in Nigeria, in 1980, there was the Lagos Plan of Action. We said that we would improve intra-African trade. Intra-African trade is still no more than 25%. In Addis Ababa, We said that we have Africa Agenda 2063 and Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And as the delegate from Mauritius said, it took him 24 hours to be here. Yet in 1988, in Yamoussoukro, in Lakota, he said that we would open the skies. Ladies and gentlemen, there is work to be done. And that work is only going to be done by us. Nobody is going to do it. And I want to remind you that for many people outside of the continent of Africa, the value of Africa is like the value of toilet paper. Useful before you use it, useless after you've used it, and useful again when you need it. Until the day that we wake up to that painful reality, we are not going to realize our potential. I'm a victim of time. I'm concluding. And let me conclude by reminding us, let us make sure that our sovereign funds are invested in the continent of Africa. Those of you from African Development Fund, our Development Bank, ask yourself, who are your largest investors now? Is it us? Those from African Exim Bank, ask yourself the name, is it our bank? And I'm not saying that we should not collaborate with others. Collaborate we must. But how are we collaborating? Is it the relationship between a horse and its rider, or it is a collaboration of equals? Mr. Vice President, mine is to remind these great men and women here, go out there, make Africa great. Africa is not going to be made great simply because we want her to be great. We must work at it. We can do it. We must do it. Let us give value to all our resources, our gold, our cocoa, our uranium, our cobalt. Let us give meaning to this fourth and fifth industrial revolution. Let us not be consumers of what we do not produce and producers of what we do not consume. The time is now. I say no more. Let us unite and let us think of this generation and generations yet to be born through creation of sustainable sovereign funds that will be Africa-wide. Let us make Africa great again because she was once great. Only ask Mansa Musa if you can commune with him. God bless.
Our next speaker is one who has spent over 3 decades working to make Africa great again. He is a leading Pan-African multilateral trade finance expert. He is who is trying to help Africa have a single payment system known as the Pan-African Payment Settlement System. He's also committed in ensuring that AFTA works by providing funding for entities who would want to do business across the continent of Africa. Yes, he's committed to making Africa great again, and he's ready to speak to us now. Please welcome with me the President and Chairman of Board of African Export-Import Bank, Professor Benedict Orama.
I'm highly honored by the privilege to address such a distinguished gathering of global and African leaders on a subject I consider critical in delivering economic prosperity to Africa. My deepest gratitude goes to the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, our gracious host, for the opportunity to deliver this keynote address. Special thanks to its Managing Director, Aminu Umar Sadiq, for this privilege and for the great job he and his colleagues are doing at NSIA. The theme of the meeting today, namely leveraging Africa's sovereign wealth funds, mobilize global capital for transformative development in Africa, touches on a very urgent matter that Africa must resolve if we hope to achieve the aspirations espoused under the African Union's Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. As I look around this room, and having listened to the insightful perspectives of previous speakers, I'm absolutely convinced that this platform has the power to fundamentally reshape Africa's investment financing architecture in a manner that can give Africa control over its destiny. Today, I will draw on my own experience in financing development in Africa and attempt to propose some changes in the philosophical foundations and perhaps conventional wisdom that underpins the policies and operations of many African sovereign wealth funds. My view is that it is by making these changes that we can hope to bring the power of African sovereign wealth funds to bear on delivering economic prosperity to our people. I will, time permitting, also take the opportunity to discuss how Afrexim Bank can forge a strong partnership with African sovereign wealth funds towards propelling industrialization and trade across our continent. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, upon gaining political independence some 6 decades ago, Africa's pioneer leaders who fought and won the independence struggle shifted their sights quickly from political freedom to the goal of attaining economic sovereignty. They anticipated a continent where prosperity will rise and spread and bridge the development gap with the industrialized world. Yet, more than 60 years later, a stark and challenging reality confronts us all. Africa still accounts for a disproportionate 39% of the global poor, despite accounting for just 17% of the world's population. Our share of global trade has gone down from about 5% in the 1960s to just under 3% today. Our manufacturing value added remains at a mere 2% of global total. These are not just mere statistics. The implications are seen on real people every day. In terms of high infant mortality, rampant deaths due to malnutrition and diseases, very limited access to healthcare, hundreds who die attempting to cross the Mediterranean to Europe, and lack of respect for our people everywhere we go. The question before us is no longer what Africa lacks, but how we can collectively seize our destiny in our own hands and propel ourselves forward. My thesis, rooted in fundamental economic growth theory, is simple, yet profound. Africa's economic growth and development hinges on how we as Africans are able to mobilize capital to finance our development. As Robert Solow, the renowned economist, taught us, in his simplified form, economic output is a function of labor and capital. Africa is blessed with an abundant supply of labor. 1.4 billion people, 60% under 25 years, a dynamic youth bulge ready to power our future. Yet capital remains the binding constraint to attaining our full development potential. The marginal cost of capital is high, yet large amounts under management by our sovereign wealth funds and even our central bank's reserves too often find their ways into markets where they earn far less, are not risk-free, as we have seen in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war, and worse still, finance those who already have enough money to finance themselves. Consider this. African sovereign wealth funds collectively manage about $100 billion in assets, and which grows from year to year. While modest by global benchmarks, the figure becomes immensely significant if we consider that they constitute about 150% of the annual FDI flows to Africa in recent years. Our pension funds hold a staggering $600 billion across key markets, especially Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya. And add to this the $100 billion in annual diaspora remittances, and the truth becomes undeniable. Africa possesses significant capital to finance its development and trade. The real problem is that most of these funds, including about $400 billion in foreign exchange reserves held by African central banks, are stashed outside of Africa. Based on neo-colonial ideas, embedded in our minds and which filtered into the policies of these institutions that our assets are safer with others than with ourselves. I've never seen anybody who keeps his money with others and not in his house. The African multilateral financial institutions are also not immune from this problem. For instance, Afreximbank was advised as it sought international credit ratings that to achieve AA or above ratings, its loans to total assets should not be more than 30%. The remaining 70% of assets should be held in so-called high-quality AA to AAA liquid instruments, in other words, US Treasury bills, European issued bonds, and so on. A decision was made by our board that since the mandate of the bank did not include any target ratings, that we should focus on what the bank was created for, ensure no less than 80% loan-to-assets ratio, and we target a rating band consistent with that. If our board did not make that decision, 60 to 70% of the bank's funds would have been financing those who did not need the money. The true challenge, therefore, is not in amassing capital, but in deploying it with purpose, ingenuity, wisdom, a questioning mind, and an unwavering commitment to our continent's transformation. African sovereign wealth funds must evolve beyond mere custodians of surplus to become dynamic catalysts of structural transformation, actively mobilizing, de-risking, and syndicating capital for industrialization, wealth creation, and regional integration. About two prevailing and often misleading assumptions shape the philosophy, investment strategies, and operations of many African sovereign wealth funds and pension funds. The first, as I already described, is the assumption that funds are inherently safer when invested outside of Africa. The second is that our continent lacks sufficient investment-ready projects. Both notions merit close scrutiny, for they contribute significantly to stunting the development impact African sovereign wealth funds can make without negatively impacting capital preservation for the future generation. The perception that African investments are inherently riskier than those in other regions often drives our funds to allocate significant portions of their capital to foreign markets. While concerns about political instability, currency fluctuations, and governance may be valid, the actual risks in many African markets is often overstated or, at best, disproportionately viewed. Little consideration is given to the fact that investing a significant share of the funds in their home country may help mitigate some of the risks and perhaps help grow the size of the funds. I will seek your permission to exceed the time, the timekeeper, please. Tragically, when African sovereign wealth funds and pension funds prioritize offshore investments, they inadvertently perpetuate this skewed perception of risk. This signals a lack of confidence in our own markets, which discourages both domestic and international co-investors. To counter this, our funds have a unique, powerful opportunity to rewrite this narrative by strategically investing within African markets. By leading with confidence, they can attract co-investors and help align perceived risk with reality. Collaborating with multilateral financial institutions such as Afreximbank, AFC, TDB, and so on, improving transparency and adopting robust risk management strategies can further enhance the appeal of African investments. Afreximbank's example in this area of debt financing is worth mentioning. The bank has shown through innovation, market knowledge, belief, and confidence in Africa that operating on the continent is not as risky as the detractors peddle. In the past 15 years, the bank has seen its shareholders' funds and total assets and guarantees rise from $1.4 billion and $1.45 billion, respectively, to $7.5 billion and $42 billion as at March 2025. Total revenues and net income also have risen from mere $92 million and $43 million 15 years ago to $3.2 billion and almost $1 billion as at the end of 2024. And since 1998, when he started paying dividends to shareholders, he has returned an amount of $1.5 billion to them as dividends. The bank has also never made a loss up to date. Its import equity subsidiary, FEDA, has also been making decent returns and reported profits amounting to about $40 million last year, with assets under management at about $1 billion. It is therefore heartening to note that some sovereign wealth funds on the continent are increasing their domestic focus. Our host, NSIA, laudably allocates about 40% of its investment to domestic projects. This is commendable. We see the impact of this new focus on the health sector, critical infrastructure, and other investments they are making. We hope that peer sovereign wealth funds can follow suit. Some years ago, our President Bank approached an African sovereign wealth fund to co-finance a critical power project in their own country. Despite years of engagement, the sovereign wealth fund declined. Undeterred, and recognizing the immense development impact of that project, our President financed the project alone. We are immensely proud of this project, for it has unlocked industrial and commercial potential, driving economic growth by revitalizing industries, creating jobs, and boosting exports, all while profoundly improving quality of life through reliable electricity in the area. This is testament to what is possible when we believe in our own potential. I also hope that our President Bank and African sovereign wealth funds can take similar steps going forward in the future. A glance at the activities for leading sovereign wealth funds from developing countries outside Africa is truly instructive. Malaysia's Khazanah invests a significant 70 to 80% of its funds domestically in critical sectors like telecommunications, healthcare, and infrastructure, directly driving national growth, while similarly, the Saudi Public Investment Fund allocates an impressive 60 to 70% of its funds to domestic projects under Saudi's Vision 2030. Imagine for a moment the accelerated trajectory of Africa's development if our sovereign wealth funds allocate $70 billion of the $100 billion they carry on the continent. Just like sovereign wealth funds, African Central Bank had also historically favored investing their reserves outside the continent. However, in recent years, there has been a significant positive shift, with more central banks now willing to diversify their investment to African institutions, a testament to years of dedicated engagement from our President Bank, which led to revised investment policies in those central banks. And in the recognition of the importance of funding from domestic resources, our President Bank developed the Central Bank Deposit Program. And today, through that deposit program, our President Bank has been able to mobilize from the African central banks about $30 billion. Through this program, that's the Central Bank Deposit Program, the bank did not only reduce the cost of funding, but also channeled those vital resources into transformative projects across the continent. By pooling central bank reserves, we have de-risked investments and lowered borrowing costs, proving that Africa's capital, when deployed creatively, can truly reshape our economic landscape. Allow me a few minutes to just talk about the second assumption, that Africa lacks sufficient bankable or investment-ready projects, because this also demands close attention. The problem we have is not that we do not have bankable projects. The problem we have is that Bankable projects exist, but we do not have the resources to develop them. Africa is brimming with potential in infrastructure, renewable energy, agriculture, technology, and other investment opportunities. The responsibility to prepare these projects rests primarily with African stakeholders, governments, private sector, and local financial institutions. Relying on external players to develop the bankable projects is neither sustainable nor realistic. African sovereign wealth funds and pension funds can play a pivotal role by innovatively creating a vehicle that will invest in project preparation, project development, building local capacity, and fostering partnerships with international financiers. In recognition of the critical opportunity, Afrexim Bank developed a joint project preparation facility. Through this facility, we engage with countries and partners to channel capital towards the meticulous preparation of domestic projects. Afrexim Bank has actually partnered with some African sovereign wealth funds to pool resources, ensuring that projects are investment ready. Embedded within this facility is a vital capacity building program designed to empower sovereign wealth funds to establish their own fully fledged project preparation facilities. In the medium term, we are looking to expand this activity. And to date, Afrexim Bank has partnered with Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, the FONSIS, that is the Senegal Foreign Sovereign Investment Authority, and Mutapa Investment Limited, Zimbabwe. We thank them and extend an open invitation to all other sovereign wealth funds gathered here today to collaborate with us. Another lost opportunity because of the practice of delegating the management of most of their funds to big foreign fund managers is the limited participation of Africa in the intellectual property war. Yet that is where most wealth is being created today. Africa is far behind in generating and ownership of IP in life sciences, fashion, music, movies, technology, and so on. Because there are few Africa-owned funds playing in that high-risk, high-return sector. Sovereign wealth funds can, with the approval of their governments, create a pool of risk funds that can target this segment. Afrexim Bank has also created a subsidiary called Canes Creations Incorporated, targeting this sector, and we backed it with venture capital commitment. Its first investment is in Mina Therapeutics, which is developing a drug that is important to people of African descent that is now in human trials. Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we start at a pivotal defining moment. Shall we remain merely stewards of dormant capital, leaving our potential buried, much like our mineral resources are buried beneath the ground? Or shall we embrace our role as the architects of a new Africa, where factories hum with innovation, bustle with trade, and our vibrant youth innovate within a burgeoning 1 trillion digital economy? My extensive experience in the development finance space has taught me one irrefutable truth. We must take our destiny firmly into our own hands. No one else will develop our continent for us. To unlock Africa's vast investment potential, sovereign wealth funds and pension funds must actively challenge the outdated assumptions I've outlined. The onus is clearly on the sovereign wealth funds to fundamentally rethink their philosophies and to champion, even guide their governments to recalibrate investment approaches and guidelines. Let us not be worshippers of mountains, held captive by their imposing presence, but be movers of them, harnessing our collective will and resources. Let us deploy Africa's capital in a way that truly unlocks the immense inherent wealth and potential that lies within the continent. Let's use our money to develop our countries and not use our money to develop others. If you lose the money, you will learn from losing the money. If you use the money to create new wealth, even if your capital does not increase, you have actually preserved the capital. The time to act is now. Let us build the Africa we want together. Thank you for your kind attention. And apologies for overrunning the time.
It is now my honor to invite our Honorable Minister for Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy to deliver his address.
His Excellency, the Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, my colleague, other colleague in the Federal Executive Council, Dr. Jumoke Uduole, Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment. I know we have the Chairman, FIRS here, Mr. Zach Adedeji. The Chairman of ASIF, as well as the distinguished executives of the Sovereign Wealth Funds, heads of agencies, captains of industry, and development finance institutions across Africa and beyond, and of course, your hosts, the Chairman of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, Dr. Segun Ogunsanya, as well as the indefatigable and quite brilliant Managing Director and Chief Executive of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, Mr. Aminu Umar Sadiq, who has, with his team, put together a quite splendid occasion, which to me is a reflection of the incredible capacity and competence that we have in our NSIA, as well as other key institutions in Nigeria. A round of applause for him. So we welcome you all, welcome you, welcome Africa. 17 nations in Africa here today to do transactions, to implement, as opposed to just to talk. And we have our non-regional, maybe one day the ASIF will have non-regional members. We have China here, the China Sovereign Investment Fund, or Sovereign Wealth Fund, and that's a good sign. That's where the money is. So you're welcome. Let me, before making any comments, let me react, if I may, to our erudite Professor Lumumba, as well as to the fireside chat. You know, Professor Lumumba had mentioned that, you know, he spoke to an Afribond. He was speaking to the fact that we should, in Africa, mobilize our own resources and intermediate those resources, those financial resources, for investments amongst ourselves, first and foremost. In this transactional world that is narrowing, the focus of Africa, the focus of regional transactions, the focus of continental, Africa-wide transactions is becoming even more acute. Just last year, while I was chair of the Africa Caucus at the World Bank and IMF group, we did launch a US dollar denominated domestic bond in Nigeria using the Nigerian infrastructure, Nigerian credit rating agencies, Nigerian custodians, Nigerian registrar. And on that basis, I think we spoke to exactly what Professor Lumumba was mentioning. That self-reliance, that self-confidence, and that ability to mobilize our own resources. As he might say, charity begins at home. And what we have to do is make sure that that is not a one-off. It is something that we build on. And I remember at the time, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Angola mentioned that they would like to have a look at this investment opportunity. And of course, clearly, that is the future. Funds, resources being raised by one nation in Africa and all the others participating, supporting. One transaction being done in Africa across, just as we said, the Africa Atlantic gas pipeline. It shouldn't be taking us 40 years to do these transactions. The second thing I would just like to mention is that Samaila Zubeiru, CEO of AFC, he did say we need to stop exporting our raw materials. And we all know our founding fathers at independence had this view. They moved from politics, were focusing on the economy, but it stalled. That's the word I will use. It stalled. In Nigeria, that industrialization process is once more underway. We're about to have 1.2 million barrels per day capacity of crude refining. We do have, once again, petrochemical complexes that are producing raw materials for the chemicals industry, the paints industry, the textiles industry, rubber, building materials, and so forth, and of course, through fertilizer for agriculture. This is the road to industrialization that AFC and others are talking about, and this is the road to value added domestically that will make the doing business, building factories, invested in entities that produce goods and services in Nigeria attractive to not just domestic producers, but also to investors in the rest of Africa. And those are the transactions that we are hoping, and we are relying on you, the ecosystem that is here. That's what we're relying on you to do over the next couple of days. So let me just echo what other people have said, and it's worth repeating. Africa stands at a pivotal moment, facing profound challenges and unmatched opportunities, as I've just described. In this decisive period, sovereign wealth funds must move beyond their traditional roles of stabilizing and wealth preservation to becoming active instruments for economic transformation. The central question is going to be, how do we leverage Africa's sovereign capital to crowd in international finance, forge impactful partnerships, and build a sustainable future for our people? And of course, at the heart of the answer lies collaboration, just the type that we have here. You know, African sovereign wealth funds are uniquely positioned to de-risk large-scale projects, signal national commitment, and align local development needs with global objectives. And to fully realize this role, we must position our funds not just as investors, but as co-developers. And this means mobilizing, structuring, and scaling blended capital platforms that can absorb institutional funding from across the world. I think we are seeing it, and we just have to reach scale in this all-important exercise of being able to attract, being able to crowd in investment. And one of the particular aspects that we must succeed in is convincing even ourselves, our authorities, that the private sector is where the real money is. And if you are going to use private sector financing, you're going to attract private sector investors, then you have to meet their terms. You have to have the philosophical mindset that you make conditions amenable for the private sector. I'm very proud of our own Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, and it has played a crucial role in capital mobilization, positioning itself as a leading capital provider and a trusted gateway for global investors seeking high-impact opportunities in Nigeria and across Africa. We have embarked on things like the Green Guarantee Company, the world's first climate-focused guarantee institution co-founded with the Green Climate Fund, FCDO, USAID, NSIA, and it's unlocked about $1 billion in guarantees. In addition, if I may just, and I think it's important to mention the successes and to mention the progress that has been made. Another one, NSIA helped to anchor the Chapel Hill Denham, Bolaji Balogun is here, Chapel Hill Denham Nigeria Infrastructure Debt Fund, the country's first and largest infrastructure debt fund, mobilizing long-term Naira capital from institutional investors to drive significant infrastructure development. We've heard we have a gap, financing gap, $100 billion a year. So, of course, we need world-class structures like this, but more of them. Furthermore, the World Bank's Mission 300 initiative that we all know about, alongside NSIA, Africa 50, International Solar Alliance, and the United Nations Sustainable Energy for All. We have the head, Damilola Ogunbi, here. They are developing a distributed renewable energy platform, which will direct substantial capital into underserved communities and commercial areas that depend on what is currently unreliable grid finance. And so on and so forth. These are the wins, these are the initiatives that are underway. Afri-Exim Bank is involved, FEDA is involved, the African Development Bank continues to lead the way in supporting general partners and continental partners to crowd in regional, continental, and global finance. Let me just move to conclude here by saying that there are three areas, really, when we look ahead, there are three priorities that we need to embrace, and I'll just headline them. Capital mobilization at scale. Without money, you can't do anything. Capital is the key. Then regional collaboration, including continental collaboration as we have here, and of course, human capital and policy alignment, a future where we envision that our ability to build domestic capacity is going to be critical in achieving our goals. So let us be clear. The world is watching Africa, not just for its potential, but for its readiness, its capacity to implement, its decision to finally move ahead. Sovereign wealth funds are central to our preparedness, to our readiness. And by acting boldly, transparently, and strategically, we can position Africa as a destination for capital rather than aid. Together, we can shape a developmental narrative that is driven from within, domestically, and financed in partnership globally with the whole world. So let us rise to this difficult task with our African sovereign wealth funds leading the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Mr. Wale Edun, OFR, the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you. Just before we receive the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it gives me great pleasure to invite on stage a trailblazing scholar and a reform strategist. Please make welcome the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, MFR.
Permit me to rest on the very well adumbrated protocols, and really, in view of proper protocol, The Honorable Minister, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, has spoken, and really he's said everything that there is to say on behalf of the Nigerian economy. Just to say that it's a pleasure to have you all here in Abuja, and we look forward to cooperating and collaborating with you all. The federal government of Nigeria is completely committed and aligned with this vision, and I want to commend the NSIA team, the chair, the CEO, and the management for this exceptional outing. Thank you.
So much, the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, MFR, for your kind, short, crisp remark this morning. At this point, Your Excellencies, very distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to make welcome on stage for his remark the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON. Thank you.
Kindly, you can sit down, please. You know, Pela Anikula Fokuti had a song, Gentleman. Almost everybody here, apart from Professor Mulumba and I, are decked out in a neck and tie and a suit. And some few gentlemen over there. Otherwise, everybody here is a gentleman or a gentlewoman. You know, there was a time I wore a suit, a Mango Park suit at a function in Lagos, and I was ridiculed. So I feel more comfortable wearing my traditional garb, like Professor. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister, Mr. Wale Edun OFR. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, MFR. The Chief Executive Officer and Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All and Co-Chair United Nations Energy, Ms. Damilola Ogumbi. The Chairman of the Board of Directors, Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, Dr. Segun Ogunsanya, and other members of the board present. The Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of NSIA, Mr. Aminu Umar Sadiq. The Chairman of Africa Sovereign Investors Forum, ASIF, Mr. Obaid Amrani, and distinguished ASIF Chief Executive Officers and members present here. My very good friend and brother, President of the African Export-Import Bank, Professor Benedict Oke Orama, CON. The Secretary General, Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, Dr. Fatima Farouk El Sheikh. The Director General of International Solar Alliance, Mr. Ashish Khanna. The Vice Chairman and Chief Investment Officer of CIC, Mr. Liu Haoling. The Vice President for Private Sector Infrastructure and Industrialization of the ADB, Mr. Solomon Kwaino. The Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Dr. Zach Adelabu Adedeji. Renowned lawyer and Pan-Africanist, Professor P.L.O. Mulumba. You are welcome. You are a star in your own right. I think I will take a picture with you and share it on my Facebook page. International organizations and development partners present here, honored guests, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This forum comes at a time when the world is undergoing rapid transformation, a time when we are compelled to think ahead, a time when we must position our continent to seize the opportunities embedded in this web of change. I am therefore honored to share with you the promise of this occasion. I'm privileged to reassure you of our readiness for the future. There is indeed no doubt that Africa faces a development dilemma. We contend with limited fiscal space amid rising expectations and growing demands for long-term capital to fuel inclusive and sustainable growth. But within this dilemma, lies our call to creativity. There can be no greater inspiration to reimagine how we invest, whether in setting up critical infrastructure, strengthening our climate resilience, promoting food security through agricultural innovation, supporting micro, small and medium enterprises, or embracing the digital economy to create jobs and expand opportunities. None of this is possible without catalytic institutions that combine strategic foresight with sound financial discipline. This is why the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority stands not only as a steward of our sovereign capital, but as a vehicle for the delivery of strategic infrastructure. It is a catalyst in our national quest to redeem renewable energy, healthcare, agriculture, and much more. It is also a hub for pioneering innovative capital mobilization solutions tailored to the realities of our continent. Across the world, sovereign wealth funds are evolving. They have moved beyond their traditional role as fiscal buffers to become architects of national transformation, mobilizing capital, supporting domestic champions, financing critical infrastructure, and attracting global institutional investors. But we cannot stop. We cannot afford to stop at admiration. We must act, and act now to close the infrastructure gap, build resilience to climate change, and create jobs for an expanding youth population. This is precisely why platforms like the Africa Sovereign Investors Forum are not just relevant, but essential. ASIP offers a Pan-African mechanism to harness the collective strength of our sovereign investment institutions. It gives us the power to share knowledge, co-invest across borders, and speak with a unified voice in the global financial ecosystem. Through this kind of collaboration, we'll attract the scale of capital required to unlock Africa's latent potential. Our future lies not in working in silos, but in pursuing regional cooperation and collective ambition. Our sovereign wealth funds must become the anchors for Pan-African investment platforms that de-risk projects, standardize processes, and deliver sustainable outcomes at scale. This is not just strategy. This is necessity. I commend the formal launch of the ASIP investment platform, a strategic initiative that deepens collaboration among Africa's wealth funds. This platform is not just an innovative tool. It is a bold move. It pools our capital, our expertise, and our networks to mobilize financing for high-impact cross-border projects. It is a step forward in advancing inclusive and sustainable development across the continent. Each African nation must come to this table prepared to compare notes and share ideas, not just to follow the trends of the global financial order, but to reshape the narrative. Africa is not a continent of risk. It is a frontier of opportunity and returns. I am pleased to note that the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, as a founding member of ASIP, has taken an active role in advancing this vision. I commend its leadership in mobilizing like-minded African funds and international partners to design long-term, impactful investment solutions. The world is watching Africa. We can either build a future where African capital catalyzes and drives African development, or resign to a future where our resources are underutilized and our ambitions underachieved. The choice is actually ours. Let us choose wisely. Let us choose collaboration. Let us choose transformation. I wish you productive deliberations and a successful summit. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the ASIF Secretariat, all participating sovereign investors, our international partners, and of course the NSIA for the excellent organization of this forum. And of course, I will thank Professor Mulumba for keeping us on our toes. It's absolutely important that we need leaders with moral conscience like you to checkmate the excesses of African leadership. The world has become a global village. If a nation is excelling, every other neighbor will get to know of it. There are some African countries that have started getting their acts right. Morocco, for instance, is an African success story worthy of emulation. I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you, and may God bless us all.
Thank you very much, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Would you like to John. We'll move on very quickly to a very critical segment. We'll have time to take more pictures with the Vice President. He's still here with us very graciously. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. You may please be seated. Thank you. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I now have the honor of introducing a very critical segment of this opening ceremony, which is the launch of the ASIF investment platform. But first, we have a video to show you. So please lend us your attention as you focus your attention on the screen. Thank you.
In the heart of Rabat, Morocco, a bold vision took shape in 2022, the launch of Africa Sovereign Investors Forum under the high patronage of His Majesty King Mohammed VI. Today, ASIF brings together 17 African sovereign investors to contribute to the rise of Africa, a shared ambition to build a resilient, inclusive, sustainable, and empowered Africa. A continent that speaks with one voice, driven by the strong will of nations and a firm gaze towards the path of its future. In a significant new step, that collective vision moves into action with the launch of an innovative investment platform, the first sovereign-led continental investment platform in Africa. Designed for scale and performance, the platforms stand on 4 distinct value pillars. Top-tier local expertise for deal sourcing and execution, access to local capital and strategic partners, risk mitigation through catalytic capital, unique investment opportunities. By adopting a modular rollout model, the investment platform allows a phased and targeted approach. First come with $1 billion targeting wind, solar, hydro, and electricity transmission and storage. Next, hubs and corridors, focusing on airports, ports, toll roads, warehouses, and industrial parks. And also, social infrastructure dedicated to housing, healthcare, education, and WASH assets. The investment platform is the result of an in-depth, multi-year design journey carried out in collaboration with world-class institutions. The investment platform is more than an investment vehicle. It is a unique opportunity to mobilize private capital at scale, build world-class deliver strong financial returns, and unlock Africa's untapped potential. As sovereign investors and stewards for future generations, we act with purpose and legacy in mind. We are building tomorrow together with an investment platform designed by Africans for Africans.
Thank you very much. And now for the official signing, I'd like to start by making welcome on stage Mr. Obaid Amran. Please give me a round of applause as he makes his way to the stage. He would also be joined by Mr. Ijoma Taylor and Mr. Kolawole Owoduni on stage for this signing. Thank you. Two agreements will be executed here. One is the pipeline building of the Africa Sovereign Investors Forum investment platform. We'd have our executive directors and chief operating officer and chief investment officer at NSIA join to witness this signing. Can we have our official photographers take their place, because we'll also be taking these pictures whilst the signing is ongoing. Thank you. Agreement expresses a specific intention of ASIF members to implement joint activities that are aligned with their respective mandates, strategic priorities, knowledge and experience towards structuring, establishing, funding and operationalizing the ASIF investment platform, working with, of course, other members of ASIF and stakeholders. Once we're done with this signing, we'll take a picture. All right, press and media, once you have it, Mr. Kolawole Owoduni and Ms. Ijoma Taylor are witnessing. So once you have it, we'll move on to the next activity. Thank you. All right, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll move on very quickly to invite on stage Mr. Ulrich Kanyinamura, who is the CEO of Agasiro Development Fund. I'd also like to invite on stage Mr. Babakar Gning, the Chief Executive Officer of FONSIS, Dr. Brooke Teye, Executive Officer, Ethiopia Investment, Nana Dwemo, who is Infrastructure Investment Fund, will also be joining for execution. Invite Great. 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. Yes, we have the picture. Right. We're moving on to the next signing. We'll have our distinguished guests take their seats. So you remain on stage, please. Yes, you remain on stage. Now we'll have 4 of our executives take their seat. Whilst this is ongoing, we'll take pictures, then I would invite our witnesses to also join them on stage as well. This is for the next execution. Now, to witness this, it is my pleasure to invite on stage the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, and the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Chief Wale Edun OFR. Both our honorable ministers will be witnessing the signing of this agreement. Press and media, please document this moment, take pictures whilst the signing is ongoing. Yes, we have to take the table out, and then we'll take everyone on stage before we invite, of course, the Vice President, but not yet, Your Excellency. We've just executed 2 agreements here, and like I stated earlier, the second agreement is a letter of intention for pipeline building of the Africa Sovereign Investors Forum investment. We'll have the group picture now. Other CEOs join us. The 4 CEOs that were invited: Mr. Ulrich Kaninamura, Mr. Baba, Dr. Brooke Teye, Mr. Nana Dwemo will be featured in this picture. Once you have the arrangement, I'd like to invite our Honorable Minister to please join now with the table. Yes, please. Dr. Jumoke Oduwole and Chief Wale Edun, thank you so much. Press and media, 3 seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Thank you. I'd now like to ask everyone to please remain on stage as I invite the Board of Directors, NSIA, to please join this picture. Board of Directors, NSIA, please join this group picture on stage. Thank you. Picture, but press and media, let's know if you can capture everyone in this single photo. Can you? In this picture, it is my honor to respectfully invite the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Kashim Shettima, GCON, to be a part of this photo as well. Just to announce to everyone, once we are done with this picture, we will take the national anthem again, and we will allow a few minutes for the Vice President to take his leave. But after this picture, we'll take the national anthem. So I'd like to have Ifunanya Nwagene very close to the stage. Press and media, 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you so much. I'd like to respectfully ask for the Vice President to please remain on stage, Mr. Obaid, Mr. Aminu Umar Sadiq, the Board Chair, NSIA, the Honorable Minister, Mr. Wale Edun OFR, and the Honorable Minister, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, to remain on stage. Mr. Zach Adedeji would also like to have you join this picture as well. So we'll take a final picture, and then we'll take the national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So press and media, 10 seconds for this shot. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 1. It's a wrap. Thank you so much. Thank you. Round of applause. Please remain on stage. We'll take the national anthem. May we please rise as we now take the national anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Welcome back to Arise News coverage of the Africa Sovereign Investment Forum hosted by the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA. And I'm here with the man who is heading NSIA, Mr. Aminu Omar Sadiq, who is the MD CEO of NSIA. Thank you so much for joining us. I just wanted to ask you, as the host of Africa Sovereign Investment Forum, how are you going to transform these high-level conversations and commitments into concrete strategies when it comes to unlocking capital for Africa?
Thank you very much. A very good question. I think what is special about this forum is two things. The first is that we have the policymakers who are able to shape the direction of sectors. We have the capital providers who are actually to deploy capital to catalyze investments. We have the entrepreneurs who create projects. We have the DFIs who are able to be catalytic with their capital. All of the different facets required in order to drive development within the continent are actually here. And I think that is the special thing with this forum.
All right. Now, you had a shift, or NSIA had a shift when it comes to the Future Generations Fund, which you mentioned at the Qatar Forum. I just wanted you to speak more about that. And as your role as the host, how can this drive more discussions at the Africa Sovereign Investment Forum?
I mean, the Future Generations Fund of the NSIA is typically a fund of funds. And depending on the macro situation, depending on volatility, depending on what NSI's risk appetite is, this strategic asset allocation changes. And so what my discussion in Qatar was a reflection of what the board and management of NSIA were looking at, given all of these idiosyncrasies and complexities of the global economic environment.
Okay, we know you're very busy. Just one last question. Yes. How can sort of government institutions, also private sector, Pan-African institutions like AFC, IFC, and the likes of people that are here, how have they been instrumental in working with NSIA to achieve this?
A couple of ways. I think the first thing is the importance of equity, that risk capital, because in order for you to be able to effect catalytic change within the continent, you have to be able to take risks. You have to determine value dislocations in certain infrastructure sectors and then be able to conceptualize, develop, and implement pioneering propositions. And that requires risk capital. So that's the first. And then the second is how does government and private capital, particularly conservative private capital, work together in order to ensure that at least there's reasonable downside mitigation in terms of how capital is deployed in these infrastructure sectors.
All right, we've just heard from the host, NSIA's MD and CEO here in Abuja, talking about unlocking the value and also capital for the African economic future. On the side of the Africa Sovereign Investment Forum 2025, hosted here in Abuja by the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, I have here with me the president of the Africa Export-Import Bank, President Benedict Orama. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, this event, the ASIF 2025, is bringing together a lot of DFIs, a lot of key players when it comes to bridging the intra-Africa trade. I just wanted to get from the Afrexim Bank's perspective, how can you bridge that gap when it comes to sovereign wealth funds and linking them up with finance and capital-backed investments in Africa?
How can we link them up?
Sorry? How can you breach the gap when it comes to sovereign wealth funds and finance-backed investments in Africa?
Well, I think I said a few things at the opening ceremony, and that's the way I see it. I think the sovereign wealth funds can do more to become impactful. Collectively, they control about $100 billion in investments. But most of this money is held outside Africa. So the money, the funds they have, which are contributed by hard-pressed governments, are kept outside in the misconceived notion that the funds are safer there than they are where they have been raised in the first place. Nothing can be further from the truth. And this, I trace this to the colonial strictures that we've had that is keeping us down. Everywhere we turn, we find it. Because when the rules setting up the sovereign wealth funds were done, they were done by experts who came from outside Africa. And they came with the view that our continent is risky. Therefore, the money there, they cannot put their money on the continent. Because of that, they're not growing as fast as they grow, because really, if they put the money properly here, they will grow faster. They're not bringing the impact on society as much as they would, because the money is financing those who don't even need the money, instead of financing the African people. So I think that the sovereign wealth funds should rethink the philosophy and rethink about how they allocate their resources. And I think reallocating the resources would mean putting a significant part of that money on the continent, because that's when they can become impactful. And I think it will actually make the sovereign wealth funds bigger, faster. And I gave an example of our Flexing Bank. Our Flexing Bank has operated here. We're not anywhere. And our Flexing Bank has grown phenomenally. So this idea that investing in Africa is inherently risky is, what's the best word for it, in my view, is, first of all, it was a smart way of, again, shafting Africa, if you may. It doesn't hold water.
During your speech, you made mention, you emphasized the fact that investments in African Bank are from Africa, about 92%. How do you envision sort of the partnership between African Bank and the sovereign wealth funds just to catalyze scalable trade-backed investments?
Yeah, well, there are so many ways. We have our fund, we have credit fund. They can, as a matter of fact, we are partnering with Nsia. They're joining us in our credit fund already. We partnered with them to set up a project preparation fund. So we hope others will come. And in fact, we've also done the same with Mutapa in Zimbabwe. We've done with Francis in Senegal. We can do more. They can come on, and with case special credit funds, they can join us. We have other funds we've done, which are equity funds. They can join us, and those equity funds can preserve their capital in foreign currency, but lend into or invest into things that are on the continent. That way, they benefit from 32 years' experience investing in Africa, a track record of investing in Africa, making money out of it, and growing the investments, while the continent then benefits from the capital that, as at today, are mostly held abroad. As a matter of fact, I think it's something government must take radically, because 100 billion, can you imagine that if 70 billion of the money that Sovereign Investment Authority here is on the continent? If it is on this continent, it is significant, but it's somewhere else. And when we want to go and borrow it to do something, they tell us we are so risky. We won't have access to it. And we're poor. Why would we be poor?
And so events like this are very important, to have people from Africa investing in Africa and having Africans benefit from those capital that we are attracting.
Yes, because the money came from Africa in the first place.
All right.
Actually, it's a internally inconsistent. It's internally inconsistent. We have bright people running those things. They're not fools. They know where to do investments and grow their capital. Assuming Africa is the world. Where would they go?
All right.
Eh?
Thank you so much. I think you really explained to us the importance of having Africans benefit from this capital that has been elsewhere in the West. We've been hearing from the president of the Africa Export-Import Bank at the side of the event of the Africa Sovereign Investment Forum here in Abuja. It was still at the Africa Sovereign Investment Forum hosted by the NSIA, and this is Arise News. I'm with the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun. Thank you so much for joining in Arise. With the conversation of building more regional collaboration and cross-border collaboration, I just wanted to ask your perspective on how institutions can play a more vital role when it comes to Nigeria's economic development and the conversations around the African sovereign wealth funds.
Thank you. I think this is a very good example. This Africa Sovereign Investment Forum, it is institutions coming together from around the world, African sovereign investment authorities and funds, as well as the world's ecosystem for investment. IFC is here, Africa 50, which invests in equity, is here. And you know, now we are in a transactional world where it is all about closing transactions, and in particular, the lessons of today are that Africa must do more business with itself across the regions such as ECOWAS and other regional groupings that we have in Africa, and more importantly, across the continent. We have a 1.4 billion population to serve with goods and services of all sorts, and we need to do that more with each other rather than relying on outside imports or even exporting.
Definitely. And with the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority hosting the African Sovereign Wealth Funds, and I understand you are the chairman of the occasion as well, I just wanted you to speak on how NSIA has been a catalyst for Africa's economic growth.
I think NSIA is in charge of our savings, and I would like to say that they have done a fantastic job. They have a very good reputation. They have tremendous capacity to implement, which is what is key, not just to be able to configure and to conceptualize, but to actually implement. So they've implemented a range of projects in the health sector, the agricultural sector, and even in the power sector. And that is something that I think we as Nigerians are very proud of, and it has culminated in them hosting this fourth Africa Sovereign Investment Forum. And this is a deal-making platform. Why investors have come, private sector, multilaterals, as well as, of course, public sector, government authorities, why they have come together is to close transactions that benefit the people of all the countries. And of course, at the end of the day, it is to unlock the values that we have and to be able to provide opportunity that to create wealth and add value.
A deal-making platform unlocking the values that we have on the continent. We've just heard from the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy at the Africa Sovereign Investment Forum hosted by the NSIA here in Abuja. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Arise News coverage of the Africa Sovereign Investment Forum hosted by Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, and I'm here with the Minister of Trade and Investment, Jumoke Oduwale. Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable Minister. And I just wanted to ask you, when you got the invitation from NSIA for the 4th Annual Africa Sovereign Investment Forums, with all the discussions about growing intra-Africa trade, long-term capital investments for Africa, what were your first thoughts? And what did you think when I get up on that stage? This is what I want the people to hear.
Okay. So I got this invitation right off the back of AFCA, that's the Africa Venture Capital Association, which was hosted in Lagos phenomenally about 6 weeks ago. And listening to that global audience, and paying attention and responding to what was needed, and particularly for Africa. As you know, we've been tracking this journey from the AFCFTA from my end, trade and industry and investment, and making sure that we're catalyzing and preparing as we look at the global headwinds in trade, in tariffs, in investment mobilization. So I thought this was a singular opportunity and I wasn't going to miss it.
Definitely. And just from the government's side, how can government institutions also help when it comes to Africa's Sovereign Wealth Fund? Because we always talk about unlocking those billions of capital for Africa and doing it ourselves. So how can your ministry, or how has your ministry worked with NSIA and the work that you're doing?
So this is an opportunity for Africa to come together to create innovative funding solutions for Africa as a response and really as a charge, an innovative charge to the rest of the world, showing the world that we can lead and galvanize for Africa by ourselves and then invite others to invest on the continent. And so with focusing on infrastructure, on technology, digital trade, on agriculture, on solid minerals, all the key sectors that we've been focusing on the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, we've been catalyzing and focusing on trade facilitation, other areas like public digital infrastructure, like the Single Window Project. These are concrete things that will facilitate investment in infrastructure, long-term investment, and that's what we're trying to attract here.
And sitting with us on the sidelines of this event is Mr. Patrick Lumumba, who is a lawyer and a Pan-Africanist. And that's where my first question is going to start. As a Pan-Africanist and with conversations surrounding Africa, trading more with Africa, dealing more with Africa, intra-Africa trade, how important is it that we're having the 4th Africa Sovereign Investment Forum?
Let me say that we are out of time. We've always recognized that Africa must trade with herself, starting with the 1963 and 1980 Lagos Plan of Action, and of course the Africa Agenda 2063 and the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. I believe that a meeting such as this is to remind us that time is not on our side and that we must move with jet-like speed to ensure that intra-African trade is enhanced. That is the only thing that will remove Africa from dependency on others.
And when you got the invitation from the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Forum to be part of this annual investment forum when it comes to the continent, Africa's economic future, what were your first thoughts? What did you say to yourself, I have to tell the people when I get on that stage?
I've always said, and I repeat it, that until the day Nigeria gets it right, Africa will never get it right. This is the most populous nation in the continent of Africa. It has some of the best men and women in Africa and in the world. And I got this invitation. I said, this is it. Nigeria must provide leadership. And when we talk about sovereign fund, we are saying that the time is now for us to think of this generation and generations yet to be born.
You've heard from Mr. Patrick Lumumba, who is a lawyer and a Pan-Africanist here in Abuja at the 4th Annual Africa Sovereign Investment Forum. He says the time is now to prepare for the next generation. All right, welcome back. You are still watching Arise News coverage of the Africa Sovereign Investment Forum, hosted here in Abuja by the NSIA. And I'm here with Dr. Dalia Khalifa, Regional Director, International Finance Corporation. Thank you so much for joining us. And I just wanted to ask you, NSIA is hosting the 4th Annual Africa Sovereign Investment Forum. With institutions like IFC, how do you see this sort of event and commitments that we'll see at this event galvanize that capital that Africa has been looking for?
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. This event is gathering some of the most important decision makers and private sector leaders. And during this event, we're going to be exploring how NSIA can continue to be the tip of the spear in galvanizing international DFIs, so development finance institutions such as the International Finance Corporation and others, and as well as the private sector. Recently, IFC concluded a country private sector diagnostic for Nigeria, And we found that with the right leadership, policies, and opportunities that are brought to the market, Nigeria has the potential to mobilize up to 20 billion US dollars in private capital over the coming 3 to 4 years. And this is impressive because we know that that will create at least 1 million jobs for Nigerians.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Now, you've just listened to Dr. Dalia Khalifa talking about the potential that Nigeria can have when it comes to creating jobs in the next 3 to 4 years. Thank you so much.